friends, and welcome back to another video. So today we're gonna talk about 25 books that I would recommend you to read in the fall season, because we have September, which means fall has officially begun, and I'm so excited for the cozy season and to cuddle up with a book. So I thought it would be the perfect time to recommend you 25 books that I think would be perfect for the fall season. Also, if the lighting changes a bit here and there, it's a bit cloudy today, so that's why sometimes it's sunny again and then there's a cloud in front of the sun and then it's a bit darker again. So just so you're prepared for some lighting changes. Yeah, I would say let's get started, shall we? But first let me drink a bit of water because this is gonna be a lot of talking. So the first book that I think you should definitely read in fall, which is actually a series, and that is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And this one is by Ransom Riggs, and it's about a mysterious island in Ireland, I think it was Ireland, I'm not 100% sure. We follow Jacob as he discovers the past of his grandpa. There's this orphanage and it's full of these peculiar children with these magical abilities, and it's so magical and whimsical, and I was absolutely obsessed with it. I loved every character in this. The characters were so unique and fun, and the storyline also just like grabs you and doesn't let you go. And the cover already tells that the fall vibes are definitely there in this book. So yeah, I highly recommend this whole series. I haven't read the most recent books. I've only read until book 4, which was the most recent book that was out when I was reading the series. But there has come out a few more books since then. I just haven't gotten around to picking any of them up. But still, I highly recommend the first 4 books, and I feel like if you're binging the series, I'm pretty sure the last 2 or 3 books are also fantastic. So yeah, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. There's also a movie, which is called Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Just not as good as the books, but it was also fun. So next I've got a book that is not really fallish, but is still kind of a fall read for me, and that is Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. It's about this girl who doesn't want to go to school anymore and who's like really struggling with going to school, and then one day her mirror shines and like gives off this magical light, and then she steps through the mirror and comes into this castle where she meets other children who are not going to school, and they have to solve this riddle, and it's all like very magical and mysterious. I always get a bit of back pain on this chair. Okay, so on to the next one, and this one was a bit of a surprise to me. I've had it on my shelves for years and have never picked it up because I haven't heard anyone else talk about this one, but it was absolutely mind-blowing to me and I was completely obsessed with it last fall season, and that one is The House of Furies by Madeline Rue. It was so creepy and eerie. This is a gothic horror story about a girl who's living on the street and is then getting picked up by an old woman who's taking her to a boarding house to work there. The guests in this boarding house always deserve to die, and this boarding house is like super creepy and eerie, and like we don't know what's actually going on there, and a lot of stuff is being revealed at the end, and it's like really mind-blowing, really creepy, really eerie, and perfect for the fall season. Like absolutely fantastic, honestly. It also has these little pictures inside. Like with every chapter, there are like these pictures and drawings, and it's so cool. Honestly, highly recommend this one, and I definitely want to continue the series. I think it's a trilogy, but I think you could also really read this as a standalone, so yeah. Next I got a bit of a more recent read. I was completely obsessed with this one. I actually read it in late summer, but it was so good and so perfect for the fall time as well. And that is Wayward by Emilia Hart. The witchiness in this book and like the connection to nature was absolutely incredible. I was so obsessed with this one. If you want to see my vlog while reading this, I'm gonna put it at the end of this video so you can check it out. We mainly follow Kate, who flees London from an abusive relationship, and then she moves into a house that she has inherited from her great aunt that she barely remembers, and then she uncovers a lot about her past. And like during all of that we follow these two different timelines of these two women who are related to her, and all of them kind of have magical abilities connected to nature, and it's super incredible. Honestly, it's a very feminist story. It like really takes you into another world, even though it's set in our world, but like how the nature is being described, it's like so immersive. This was probably one of my favorite reads this year so far. One that I would highly recommend if you love Harry Potter and want to read something similar to Harry Potter but not read Harry Potter, then I would highly recommend The Iron Trial by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. This one is, I think it's a middle grade, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I remember it being a middle grade, and then I think later in the series it's going to the young adult section. I'm not 100% sure, but it was really intense, and it's in a magic school, but a bit of a different magic school than Hogwarts. I can't say too much because I don't want to spoil it for you, but they have to pass the Iron Trial to get into the Magisterium, which is the magic school. But the main character has been told his whole life that he shouldn't trust any magicians. And yeah, so he tries to do his worst, but he like literally fails at failing, and it's like so magical and whimsical, and the ending literally blew my mind. Like this is such a different take on like the whole magic school thing and like the Harry Potter setting. It's like a completely different take on it, but we also got the trio, and yeah, you can definitely tell that it's inspired, but the writing in this one was also so fun. Okay, and next I got a series that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love the series, but I also see that it's sometimes a bit juvenile, I would say. There are definitely a few cringy parts in it, so be aware if you want to read that one. But that one is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and like the whole trilogy. But it's definitely like very, very focused on like the teen romance aspect. So if that's not your cup of tea, you might not enjoy this one. It like really unravels you in this like fairy tale-esque world, and it's so good, honestly. The writing is not like the most complicated one, like it's written rather simply, I would say, but very flowery and beautiful. And then I got the first non-fantasy book in this little recommendation video, and that is If You Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. The emotional roller coaster that this one takes you on is undescribable. I don't know. It's really, really intense. It really makes you feel like you're watching a movie, which I always really love in books. Like the characters in here are so real and lovable and so interesting. You love some parts of them and you also hate some parts, and I think that's what makes like really good characters, in my opinion. It takes you through several years of their lives, of their teen lives. It is a YA book, so be aware of that, but yeah, this one broke me, honestly. It's very sad, so like if you're not someone who loves sad books, maybe stay away from this one. And I feel like every time I'm thinking of this one, I'm thinking of fall. So that's why it's on this list. And now I got a series that I've only read one book of. But this one screams autumn, which is why it's on this list, even though I haven't read like all of the books, but I will definitely continue the series. And I also got a special edition from the series, and that one is The Diviners by Libba Bray. And we follow Evie, who's sent away to live with her uncle, I think, in New York City in the 1920s, in the fall season, obviously. Her uncle has this like really creepy museum with all of these like occult things, and it's super creepy, it's super eerie. There's a lot of stuff happening in here, so I can't really like wrap it up in a few sentences. Also without like spoiling you. Next up I got a duology that is very near and dear to my heart, but I actually preferred the first one a lot more than the second one, so I'm only recommending the first one to you, but you kind of have to read the second one to like know how it's actually ending. But it's still like such a good duology, and the vibes are definitely there, and it's like very dark academia romantasy. So the book I'm talking about is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. The love story in this is so my heart, like I don't even know how to put it into words without like getting emotional, because these two really have my heart. And the story in this is kind of similar to World War II, I would say, but it's not really World War II. It's a mystical war between gods, and it's about Iris and Roman, who are working at this newspaper, and they're like rivals, which is the reason this is called Divine Rivals. And it all goes from there, and it's very like magical, but also very kind of political in some sense, and you really feel with these characters and really feel their pain and their love and their desperate feelings and everything. So if you're looking for something emotional but something that's still fantasy, I think this one is it. And now I got a bit of a mystery one, and that one is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I need to find my words for this one, because this is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. I've listened to the audiobook of this one, and it like really has you by your throat. Like it's, I don't know if you even say that, but like it's so intense, and you like really want to know what's happening at the end. I really felt like these characters were real, and I still feel like these characters are real. Like it's not something where you're like, while you're reading it, oh yeah, these characters feel very real, and afterwards you're kind of disconnecting from them. No, I'm still thinking about these characters to this day, and it's been, I don't know, I think it's been 2 years since I've read this, but yeah, it's about this 19-year-old runaway Sadie, and also this podcast who's trying to investigate what happened to Sadie, because we don't really know what happened to Sadie. We follow like her POV, and then we follow this podcast's POV, and that's why it works extremely well as an audiobook, because there's a podcast and it also has these different voice actors. And also what's something that's really special about this book is that Sadie has a stutter, and I absolutely love that, because it makes her so relatable and flawed and unique, and I love that. And I also struggle with stuttering every once in a while, like not as extreme as Sadie does, but it makes you feel really seen. And I really love that we got to hear a perspective about a girl that like we rarely hear about, because I don't know any other book that discusses stuttering, but I know a few people in real life that struggle with that, so I highly appreciated a POV of a girl that stutters and all of her struggles with it, and also the mystery in this book and everything. This one is a 6-star read for me, so yes, please go read it if you haven't yet. Definitely go read this, please, so we can talk about it. Also, if you've read it, let me know in the comments, please, because I need to talk about this book. Like, this is still not letting me go. And then I got another mystery, and that is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I binged this one in 1.5 days, I think. It was so intense. It's about these 5 friends who take a trip to spring break? Yeah, to spring break to Florida, I think. And then their RV breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and there are these people who are trying to shoot them, and it's like really creepy and you don't know what's going on, and it's all like the plot twist at the end blew my mind. I loved every second of this. I also really loved the main character because she was a little bit weird, a little bit different, and I always really love when characters are a little bit weird and different. And then I also got another trilogy by Holly Jackson that I absolutely love, and that is the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. And I listened to all of them on audiobook, which is why I don't have the physical copies. But I've recently watched the TV show with my boyfriend, and we were like binging it. It was so intense and so good. The audiobooks were also incredible. It's about Pip, who has to write a school paper, and she has always been wondering about the case of, I think Ellie was her name. I'm not 100% sure. I'm really bad with names, so excuse me. But she then decides to write her school paper about this case, about this missing girl. She uncovers a bunch, and the romance in this book, it's one of my all-time favorite fictional couples. I love them so much. I get so teary-eyed. They are so cute, and I'm not gonna say the name of the guy because it might spoil the book for you, but highly recommend this one. Highly recommend the TV show. Okay, now we're on to one of my, if not my all-time favorite author, and that is no other than V.E. Schwab. I've read The Near Witch recently by V.E. Schwab, which I think was her first book. I'm not 100% sure, but this one is super creepy, super eerie. It's about this town which is like surrounded by the moor, and at night there's like this witch, and it's taking away all of these children, and you don't really know what's going on and like what's happening. But there was this story of this near witch from the past, but everyone thought it was just a story. It all goes from there. I gotta say that it's not like my favorite V. Schwab book, but the vibes were so full on autumn that I had to put it on this list. And the vibes really carried this book for me, I gotta say. The storyline could have been a little bit better, in my opinion, a little bit more intense, and the plot twist at the end could have been a little bit more mind-blowing. Besides that, the vibes were definitely worth reading this one, so still highly recommend this one, even though it's not the best book I've ever read. But now I got a V. Schwab book that is one of the best books I've ever read, and that is Vicious by V. Schwab. This one is about these 2 college friends who are really into science and like try to kill themselves and then come back with like supernatural powers. It like really gives you those dark and like gruesome feelings when you're reading it. The characters were like so flawed, which again I really love. So it really had me there, and like you're really feeling with these characters, and it's like this love-hate relationship that you have towards these characters because they're so flawed that you kind of hate them, but you also kind of love them. And it's literally incredible. What V. Schwab did here with her writing really blew me away. And now, my absolutely favorite V. Schwab book, and one, if not my all-time favorite book ever, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I've only read it one time because I'm not a huge rereader. Like, I don't reread any books rarely. Like, the only book I've reread was Daisy Jones and the Six, because the TV show came out, but I tried to reread this once, but then wanted to read something new, and so yeah. But the reading experience I had reading this book was incredible. It's a bit of a slower one, so if you're not someone who loves really detailed books and like books that like really take you on a journey that like are a little bit of a slower pace, then you might not enjoy this, because I heard a lot of people saying this is too slow. It's about Addie, who's living in, I think, 1600 something? No, 1714, yeah, right. She is supposed to marry this guy, but she doesn't want to marry him, so she goes to the woods and asks the devil for freedom and for not having to marry this guy. But what happens then is that she is cursed with that no one remembers her and no one remembers who she is. And every time someone talks to her, she is instantly forgotten again. She's not able to write, paint, take photos, anything. I mean, in 1714 you were not able to take photos, but it's getting there, and we follow her through 300 years of her life. We experience all of these different countries and all of these different times, and it's so historical but also so magical, and like really gives you a feeling of the world, and it makes you feel so alive. And I completely loved this book. It made me feel so alive. It made me really feel the world around me, and it was so emotional. Like, for me, it's the book that is the most me, like that I would say I identify the most with. Like, I feel so seen by this book. There's a lot that happens in here that I haven't mentioned yet. It will blow you away when you get further into it, but it is a bit slower, so yeah. Okay, and then the last V. Schwab book that I have on this list, and that is Gallant by V. Schwab. And if I remember correctly, this one is about an orphan who's being sent to this house that was mentioned in a letter from her mother that is called Gallant. And she tries to uncover her past in this house, and it's like this magical house, and you don't really know what's going on. A lot is uncovering, and I don't want to say too much because I feel like it's gonna spoil this book. But the vibes were immaculate. You really want to know what's going to happen, and it's also not my all-time favorite V. Schwab book, but it's definitely a good one. It's definitely a good one, and her writing always carries her books, I feel like. Like, her writing is so unique and flowery, like kind of poetic, I would say. Like, it really takes you away, and it really like makes you feel everything in this book. And I mean, the cover is beautiful, and also like it's so stunning. Like, the edition that I got, I don't know if I think every edition has this, but there are also a lot of drawings and artwork on here, and it's so beautiful, honestly. And now I got a bit of unfall-like book that is still fallish, but it's not fantasy and it's not creepy, dark, anything. And that one is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. And like, I know you could potentially read this in any season, but I feel like it's very fallish for some reason. Like, it's about these two boys who fall in love and go through these everyday struggles, but the vibe of the drawings is very fallish. Like, let me show you. Like, the leaves everywhere and everything. I just love this graphic novel series. So yeah, if you want a quick read and something that is cute and cozy and sweet, highly recommend the series, highly recommend all of Alice Oseman's books, actually, but this one particularly for fall. And now on to another one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is no other than Leigh Bardugo. And I got here Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and if you know me and if you know my channel, you know this one is one of my absolutely favorite books. I think it's almost up there with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It's just not a book that I identify as strongly with as I did with Addie LaRue, but it's very intense. Like, the plot twists in this duology are unmatched. The characters have so much depth and so much backstory. It's about these 6 characters who live in this fantasy world that is kind of inspired by the Netherlands and Russia. And these 6 characters have to go on this heist. A lot is happening, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil you, but the fantasy aspect is just very intense and it's very dark. Like, the whole vibe of this book is very dark. Like, I feel like you always have this filter on when you're reading it, like it's a dark filter, if you know from movies that are like a bit darker. Like, that's what this book feels like. Like, if you haven't read this yet, like, what are you doing? Seriously, I can't imagine that anyone will not like this book. Okay, and now onto another one from Leigh Bardugo, but the Six of Crows one was a YA book and this one is an adult book, and that one is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So this one is about Alex, who has this like very drug-heavy, gruesome past, and during a multiple homicide, she's the only survivor, and in her hospital bed, she is being offered to go to Yale and be a part of the secret society at Yale. And I really love books that like connect the real world with like this fantasy magical world, and it has like these dark academia vibes, but it also has this like huge mystery and also these like very creepy fantasy aspects, and there's a lot of magic in here and these secret societies. I think, in my opinion, it's the most perfect book for the fall season. I opened up the blinds a bit because the sun has been behind clouds for a while now, so I'm hoping this lighting situation is alright. And I only got 16 minutes left to film on my SD card and 7 books left to talk to you about. Wish me luck that I can get through them in 16 minutes, but I think it might be possible. The next one I got is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I actually don't know how to put this one into words because it's such a weird and magical story that like doesn't really make sense thinking about it afterwards. Like, it's been a while since I've read this. Takes you into like a whole nother world that like doesn't have any connection to our world, in my opinion. It's actually a very stunning and unique story. I haven't read anything like it since. Like, it's so incredibly unique. I'm just gonna read to you the first few sentences, what it says here, because I just don't know how to wrap it into words, honestly. When Zachary Rawlins stumbles across a strange book hidden in this university library, it leads him on a quest unlike any other. Its pages entrace him with their tales of love-lorn prisoners, lost cities, and nameless acolytes. But they also contain something impossible, a recollection from his own childhood. Determined to solve the puzzle of the book, Zachary follows the clues he finds on the cover: a bee, a key, and a sword. They guide him to a masquerade ball, to a dangerous secret club, and finally through a magical doorway created by the fierce and mysterious Mirabelle. This door leads to a subterranean labyrinth filled with stories hidden far beneath the surface of the earth. If this sounds like something you would enjoy and you want something completely out of this world magical. And now we got another YA book that I've read a while ago, like almost 10 years ago. The Young Elites by Marie Lu. This one follows Adelina, and Adelina survived the plague. The plague is said to have made some kids or some survivors have magical powers, and all of these people who have these magical powers are coming together and are forming the young elites. But our main character is like super dark and gruesome at times, and she's more of like a villain main character, I would say. And that's what I really loved about this book, because it was so different than what I was used to, especially during that time of like 2015, where like the chosen one trope was like really in your face. But yeah, this one was so much fun. I absolutely loved the whole trilogy. And then I got These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This one is an urban fantasy set in the 1920s in Shanghai about these two gangs who are rivals. The one gang is like this Chinese gangster gang and then the other one is like this Russian gangster gang, and they're called the White Flowers, I think, if I remember correctly. And there's also this love story between these two people in these different gangs, and it's like this whole rivalry. I think it's a bit of a different fall read, but it's definitely a fall read in my opinion, because it has this like very different fantasy aspect, and also it's very creepy and very intense and has like this whole mystery to it as well. Also, I really love Chloe Gong's writing, and it also makes you learn so much about the 1920s in Shanghai. Like, it was so educational as well. And now I got another author that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is also the first English-speaking author that I've ever met in real life, and that is R.F. Kuang. This one is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and it's more of a mystery kind of book. And we follow June, who's like a very unsuccessful writer, and she's very jealous of this other writer who is a Chinese woman. Like, this becomes important, so that's why I'm mentioning it. She has this like inner rivalry with her, but this Chinese author, Athena, is very, very popular and very successful. And she's like very jealous of her, but then they meet up and Athena dies, and she sees this manuscript of her that Athena has completely finished laying on her desk after she has died, and she steals that manuscript and publishes it as her own. It has like this whole criticism of so many different topics like publishing, racism, social media. It has so many facets, and it like doesn't let you go up until the very end. The ending could have been slightly better in my opinion. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it makes you think about so many different topics, and it has like this whole like huge mystery aspect about it, where you're like, what's going to happen? And then another book by R.F. Kuang is Babel, and Babel absolutely has my heart. And this one is about students who are studying at Oxford, and the main character has been taken from China by these European Englishmen and has been growing up in England, and it has like this whole criticism of racism and slaves, and it was so educational. Like, it really blew my mind on how many facts I was learning in this book. I gotta say that it was really hard to grasp every single fact, but it really opened my eyes about so many things, and it blew me away in that aspect. But it was also packed in this fantasy book that was set at Oxford, and like the vibes were like so fallish and so dark, and we had like this whole found family trope in here as well, which I always absolutely love. But definitely consider, if you're picking this up, that you will have to grasp a lot of information. It will be a lot to digest, and it will definitely hurt your heart in many ways. So yeah, just be aware, like, don't read this while you're like studying something for uni or something, because this sometimes feels a bit like studying because it has so many facts in here. Highly recommend this one. Dark Academia, amazing. And now another one of my favorite books, that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This one is about a girl who lives in a library amongst magical grimoires, and one day one grimoire, or like one like super strong, powerful grimoire escapes or is like being broken out, and our main character has to figure out what's happening and like has to uncover this magical plot in this magical world with a wizard, even though she was told her whole life that wizards are very dangerous and are not to be trusted. But there's also this little love story, and it's all like very magical and fantasy-like. This book really feels like a Ghibli movie, so if you're looking for something that feels like a Ghibli movie, this one is it. Like, seriously, so magical and so whimsical, and it like, I feel like I'm saying magical about every single book in here, but you know, that really felt like a Ghibli movie in book form. And also the main character is a tall girl because she has grown up with all of these grimoires. She has grown a lot taller than like normal height, and I absolutely love that because I'm also a tall girl, so I felt very seen with this one. It was incredible. And then last but not least, I got the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. Such a cozy, wholesome, witchy fantasy story that really warms your heart. It was so cozy and a bit of a slower pace, but still had so many plot twists that I enjoyed. Gave me all of those cozy, warm feelings during last fall, and I absolutely love this one as well. So yeah, those were all of the books on my fall recommendation list. I hope you enjoyed them. If you've read any of them, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. And if any of them are on your TBR as well. If you enjoyed this one, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Like, it would really mean a lot. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!